All right, good morning, guys. Today we are going to be learning about factoring when a is greater than 1, and then we'll switch it up and do factoring with difference of squares. So today we're going to start with the a is greater than 1. This should be a little squared. I don't know why it's not up there. Okay, so here's your standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are just numbers, and a is greater than 1. So as you can see here, 2x squared minus 15x plus 18. 2 would be our a, negative 15 would be our b, and 18 would be our c. A is greater than 1. 2 is obviously greater than 1. So we're going to do a little method that I call slide and divide. You're going to slide over this first number and multiply it. So 2 times 18. So we're doing slide and divide. First step is multiply a times c. So 2 times 18, which is going to give us 36. You can rewrite it if you'd like. You don't necessarily have to, but rewriting it is doing it. So you take away your a value, so you'll get x squared. Keep your b value minus 15x, and your new c value is 36. So now you're going to do what we just learned, multiplying two numbers to give you 36, but add to give you negative 15. So those two numbers are going to be are going to be 3 and 12. Okay, you need to pay attention because we do have a positive number that we multiply, but to add to give us a negative number. So another way to give us a positive number when multiplying is 2 negatives. So if I make both of these negatives, negative 3 times negative 12 gives me a positive 36, but negative 3 minus 12 also gives me a negative 15, so it would be x minus 3 and x minus 12. Okay, now your last step is to divide by your a value in the original problem. So our a value in the original problem here is this 2. Okay, so we're going to divide these by 2. If they do not divide, 3 divided by 2, I cannot do 3 divided by 2. It would give me a fraction. You're going to take this 2 and slide it in front of the x to make it 2x minus 3. Okay, and then we'll do 12 divided by 2. Well, 12 divided by 2 divides evenly to give us a negative 6. So that would be your answer. Okay, now we're going to try the same thing with 14. We're going to slide our a over and multiply it by c. So 5 times negative 48 is going to give us a negative 240. You can rewrite it if you want. You don't have to, but you're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you negative 240, but add to give you 22, okay? So that's the same thing as this step right here. I'm just not writing it out. We're just looking for two numbers that multiply to give us negative 240, but add to give us 22. So those two numbers, I'll list out all the factors for you. 24 and 10, 2 and 120, 12 and 20, and 8 and 30. We need it to be a negative 240, but a positive 22. So that means our bigger number is going to have to be positive and our smaller number will have to be negative. So it will be p minus 8 and p plus 30. Don't forget you have to divide by your a value. So divide by that 5. 8 divided by 5, 30 divided by 5. I can't do 8 divided by 5, so I am going to slide it in front of the p to give me 5p minus 8. 30 divided by 5 is going to give me 6. So 5p minus 8 and p plus 6. All right, moving on. When doing your trinomials, make sure that you're always looking for a greatest common factor first. If there's no greatest common factor and a is greater than 1, that is when you'll use the slide and divide method, okay? So there's no number greatest common factor between 3, 19, and 40. So I'm going to slide my a over and multiply it by negative 40. So 3 times negative 40 is going to give me a negative 120. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 120, but add to give me negative 19, okay? So you can also write it out if you want. X squared minus 19. Oh, it's h, sorry. H squared minus 19h minus 120 now. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 120, but add to give me a negative 19. You will find out what those two are. So 12 times 10 and 24 times 5. The bigger number is going to have to be negative because our middle number is negative. So negative 24 plus 5 will give us a negative 19. So h minus 24 and h plus 5. Don't forget, we're dividing now. We did our sliding. Now we're dividing by our a value. So divide by 3. 24 divided by 3 will divide evenly to give us h minus 8. 5 divided by 3 does not work, so we need to slide that bottom number in the front to give us 3h plus 5. All right, moving on to the next one. No greatest common factor between 12, 5, and negative 2. So now we're going to slide and divide. 12 times negative 2 gives us a negative 24. Two numbers that multiply to give us negative 24, but add to give us 5. List your multiples if you want to. 6 and 4, 2 and 12, 8 and 3. Well, 8 and 3 will work, but it is a negative 24. So one of them has to be negative, but it has to be a positive 5. So our smaller number is going to be negative. So 8 minus 3 gives us a positive 5. So we'll do x plus 8, x minus 3. Do not forget to divide by your a value. Divide by 12. Divide by 12. Here's where it gets a little tricky, okay? So 8 divided by 12. It does not divide evenly. Because it does not divide evenly, you need to see if you can reduce the fraction. In this case, we can reduce the fraction to 2/3, okay? So it would become x plus 2 divided by 3. And the same thing over here, x minus 3 over 12, that is going to reduce to 1/4, so x minus 1/4. And then you need to slide that number in front, okay? So our final answer is going to be 3 plus x plus 2 and 4x minus 1. Please make sure you're checking to see if the fraction can reduce. The ones before didn't reduce, so we could just slide them over in the front. And that would be your final answer. All right. 17. 6y squared minus 5y minus 21. Slide in that 6 over to multiply by negative 21 to give us a negative 126. You're going to find two numbers that multiply to give you negative 126, but add to give you a negative 5. So those two numbers are going to be, I'm going to go ahead and write this out for you real quick. You don't have to do this stuff. That's totally up to you. Two numbers that multiply to give us negative 126, but add to give us a negative 5 will be 14 and 9. Because it's a negative in the middle, our bigger number is going to have to be negative. Now we have to divide by our a value, so dividing by 6. So we will have to reduce the fraction. 14 over 6 is going to reduce to 7 over 3. And 9 over 6 is going to reduce to 3 over 2. Then we'll slide those in front of the variables to give us 3y minus 7 and 2y plus 3. There's your final answer. Moving on to number 18, greatest common factor. Well, they're all even numbers, so our greatest common factor is going to be at least 2. Take out a 2, we'll get 8m squared plus 30m minus 27. Now we'll have to do our slide and divide method and keep the 2 in the front the whole time. So 8 times negative 27 gives me a negative 216. Two numbers that multiply to give me a negative 216 but add to give me 30. That is going to give me, I'm going to carry that 2 down, 36 and 6. Our bigger number is positive, so 36 minus 6 gives us 30. 36 times negative 6 gives me negative 216. Don't forget that you need to divide by your a value. So in the one that we did the sliding, it's the a value that we're going to divide by. So divide by 8. Looks like here we will have to reduce our fractions. 36 divided by 8 is going to reduce to 9 over 2. And 6 divided by 8 is going to reduce to 3/4. Then slide that number in front of the variable to give us 2m plus 9, and 4m minus 3. That would be your final answer. Please do not forget to carry that 2 down, your greatest common factor. All right, number 19. No greatest common factor here, so we're going to go ahead and do our sliding and dividing. 9 times 4 gives us 36. Two numbers that multiply to give me 36, but add to give me that negative 12. That is going to be 6 and 6. It is a negative 12, but a positive 36, which means both of my numbers are going to have to be negative. So negative 6 times negative 6 gives me a positive 36. Negative 6 minus 6 gives me a negative 12. Dividing by my a now, so divide by 9. 6 divided by 9 is going to reduce to 2/3, so we'll get x minus 2/3 on both of them. Then we can slide that 3 in front of the x's to give us 3x minus 2 and 3x minus 2. You can also write it as 3x minus 2 squared. These are the same thing, just saying that I have 2 of them. All right, number 20, greatest common factor, 8, 56, and 96. You can factor out an 8 to give us y squared minus 7y plus 12. Two numbers that multiply to give us 12, but add to give us 7. I can just factor this trinomial because my a equals 1. That would give us y plus 4 and y plus 3. If you're struggling, please make sure you're writing out all the factors over to the side. So 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, and just add them together to see which one's going to give you that middle number. So that is how you factor trinomials when a is greater than 1, while also checking for a GCF. So now we're going to change directions and we're going to factor a difference of squares. So a perfect square is a number that is, so let's say 9. 3 times 9 is a perfect square because of 3 times 3. So that means 4 is also a perfect square because of 2 times 2. 16 is a perfect square because of 4 times 4. So all your answers that when you multiply the number by itself that you get are perfect squares. So let's list them all. 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, 169, and 196. So 2 times 2 gives us 4, 3 times 3 gives us 9, 4 times 4 gives us 16, 5 times 5 gives us 25, and so on. So the rule here, you are going to get a squared minus b squared. The rule is that you're going to split it up, so it's a plus b and a minus b. These will be the square roots of the numbers. So the square root of 4 would be 2. The square root of 9 would be 3. The square root of 16 would be 4. Okay, and those are the numbers that you're going to put where they are. So number 3 as an example. The square root of 9 is 3. If there's a variable with it like x squared, you're just going to make it 1x. Okay, so this is our a squared value, and this is our a value because the square root of 9 is 3. The square root of x squared is just x because x times x gives us x squared. Same thing with our b value, so b squared here. You also have to pay attention that it must always be a minus sign in the middle or you cannot do it. So the square root of 49 is 7. The square root of y squared is just 1y. So we're going to write it out as our a value is 3x plus, because that's the rule, our b value, which is 7y. Now our a value again, 3x, minus our b value, which is 7y. That would be your final answer. So if you can find out what a and b are, you can easily get your answer. Just make sure one binomial is positive and the other binomial is a minus in the middle. Okay? So when doing these, like I said, when doing any kind of factoring, you always have to check for a greatest common factor first. Looking at number 4, I have 72 and 2, which tells me that I have a greatest common factor because they're both even numbers. 2 will go into both of these numbers. So I'm going to factor out 2. 2 times what will give me 72? So 72 divided by 2 gives me 36. Leave that c to the 4th there. 2 divided by 2 gives me a negative 1. Now we have 2 perfect squares. 1's also here. Square root of 36. So this is now our a squared. This is our b squared. The square root of 36 is going to give me 6. We're going to split our c to the 4th in half. So c to the 4th in half is c squared. Then b squared. So the square root of 1 is just 1. So we're going to write that out. A plus b, so it'd be 6c squared plus 1 and 6c squared minus 1. Do not forget to carry down your GCF and put the 2 in front, and that would be your final answer. All right, number 5. We are going to take a greatest common factor because 7 can go into 28 and 7 goes into 7. We also need to take out our smallest variables. So this has m to the 7th and this has an m. So I can take out 1m. This has n. This has n to the 3rd. So I can take out 1n to give me m to the 6th minus 4n squared. Okay? You need to realize that your variables, like m to the 6th here, always need to be an even number so we can split them in half when doing the binomials. So my a value is now going to be, this is a squared, my a is going to be half of 6, so m to the 3rd. And my b squared is going to be the square root of 4, which is 2, and the half of n squared, which is just n. So 7mn, carrying down the greatest common factor, a is m cubed plus b, which is 2n. Same thing, m cubed minus 2n. There's your final answer. All right, last one, greatest common factor. Well, they both have 10, so 10 is our greatest common factor. They both have a w, so I can take out one w to give me w to the 4th minus 1. So this is our a squared now. This is our b squared. Half of the square root of w to the 4th, well, the half of 4 is w squared. Square root of 1 is just 1. So it's going to be carrying down our greatest common factor, 10w, w squared plus 1, and w squared minus 1. Okay, here's where you need to check things again. So I have my greatest common factor, I have w squared plus 1, and I have a w squared minus 1. Whenever you see the minus, you always need to check and see if both of those can be square rooted again. Okay, so half of w squared is going to give me w. So remember, always when it's even, and the square root of 1 will give me 1. So now we have to do it again, and we're going to carry everything else down. So it will be 10w. I'm carrying down my w squared plus 1. Now I'm going to break this up into my a plus b and a minus b. So it would be w plus 1 and w minus 1. That is how you do difference of squares. It would be a good idea to get to know those square roots and perfect squares. All right, you guys have a great day.